All right, ready to explore ancient Greek philosophy. Today we're taking a deep dive into the life and work of Timon of Phlius.
Sounds fun.
He lived from roughly 320 to 230 BCE.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, he wasn't your typical philosopher, quietly pondering in a corner. He was a champion of Pyrrhonism,
Okay.
which, as you know, advocates for suspending judgment. But at the same time, he kind of ruthlessly mocked, well, pretty much every other philosopher, and he did it through satirical poetry.
Really?
Yeah, so how's that for a contradiction?
It really is a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pyrrhonism, named after Pyrrho of Elais, really emphasizes the limits of, well, what we can really know.
Right.
But Timon, while obviously deeply influenced by Pyrrho, also dove headfirst into philosophical debates.
Yeah.
Which, on the surface, seems to contradict the very essence of what he was promoting.
It's like he's saying, don't claim to know anything for sure, but let me tell you why everyone else is wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
But before we get to that juicy philosophical puzzle, let's rewind a bit. What can you tell us about Timon's life?
Well, his early years were far from the typical path of a philosopher.
Right.
He actually started as a dancer.
A dancer.
Yeah, in his hometown of Phlius. Then he studied with Stilpo of Megara, who was a philosopher known for his work on ethics and logic.
Interesting.
But the real turning point was his encounter with Pyrrho of Elais.
Ah.
It completely changed Timon's direction,
Really?
leading him to embrace Pyrrhonism.
So from dancer to skeptical philosopher.
Yeah.
That's quite a journey.
It is.
And unlike his teacher, Pyrrho, who didn't write much, Timon was a prolific writer.
He was.
His most famous work is this collection of satirical poems called Siloi,
Right.
which translates to lampoons. It was
Oh.
divided into 3 books.
Yeah.
And he used a really unique narrative structure.
Oh, yeah. Timon was a master of satire, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
He wrote Siloi using a first-person perspective. To poke fun at, different philosophical schools, the whole thing is structured as dialogues with the pre-Socratic philosopher Xenophanes.
Oh, wow.
It's as if he's using Xenophanes as a mouthpiece to deliver these, witty and cutting critiques of other philosophers, the older ones in Book 2 and the more recent ones in Book 3.
So who were some of his victims, so to speak? Give us the dirt. Who got roasted?
Oh, he went after some big names.
Okay, good.
Anaxagoras, with his concept of mind.
Oh, right.
Empedocles, who's known for his theory of the 4 elements.
Yeah.
They both felt Timon's satirical sting.
Wow.
Even Arcesilaus, the head of the academy during Timon's time, wasn't spared.
No way.
And the thing is, Timon's satire wasn't just random insults.
Right?
He targeted very specific points in their philosophies,
Okay.
zeroing in on what he saw as inconsistencies or absurdities.
So it's like he was creating philosophical caricatures,
Yeah.
highlighting their flaws in a humorous way. But there were a few philosophers that he actually praised, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Parmenides and Zeno of Elea.
That's right. Timon admired Parmenides and Zeno for their willingness to challenge common-sense views of reality. Shows that Timon valued intellectual boldness, even if he expressed it through mockery most of the time.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. Besides Siloi, Timon also wrote this intriguing work called Indalmoi,
Right.
meaning images or appearances.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a mystery, isn't it?
It is. Indalmoi is shrouded in mystery because we only have a few fragments.
Right.
It's difficult to reconstruct the whole picture.
Yeah.
Some scholars believe it explored the power of appearances.
Okay.
It suggests that although Pyrrhonists suspend judgment about the true nature of things, they still rely on appearances to navigate everyday life.
That makes sense. You can't go around doubting every single thing you encounter. But there are other interpretations of Indalmoi.
Whoa, absolutely. Some scholars suggest it might have been a tribute to Pyrrho himself, depicting his state of tranquility. Others think it could have been focused on exposing the illusions that non-Pyrrhonists fall prey to. We're left with these tantalizing fragments and have to piece together the puzzle ourselves.
Like a philosophical treasure hunt.
Yeah.
And speaking of puzzles, Timon also wrote a prose work called Pytho.
Yes.
What do we know about this one?
Well, Pytho seems to be a deep dive into Pyrrho's philosophy itself.
Okay.
It depicts a conversation between Timon and his teacher,
Right.
probably set near the temple at Delphi, which was known for its oracles and pronouncements.
Interesting.
It's likely that Timon used this setting to explore the mysteries of knowledge and uncertainty. Scholars believe Pytho presented Pyrrho's ideas through Timon's eager questioning, almost like a masterclass in Pyrrhonism.
So we have a satirical poet,
Yeah.
a mysterious explorer of appearances, and a dedicated student of Pyrrho, all in one.
That's right.
Seems like Timon wore a lot of philosophical hats. But let's get to the heart of it. What were some of his core ideas, the things that really defined his thinking?
That's where things get really interesting. Timon grappled with some of the most fundamental questions about knowledge, reality, and how we make sense of the world.
Lead the way. Let's unpack Timon's mind.
One of the most intriguing aspects of Timon's philosophy is this idea of embracing appearances.
Embracing appearances.
Yeah, he argued that, well, while Pyrrhonists suspend judgment about the true nature of things, they can still rely on appearances to make decisions in everyday life.
That sounds incredibly practical, but how does that work in practice? Can you give me like an example?
Sure, imagine you're offered a honeycomb.
Okay.
A Pyrrhonist might say, I don't claim to know the absolute truth about honey,
Right.
but it appears sweet, and based on that appearance, I'll gladly take it.
I see. So it's not about denying our senses or experiences,
Right.
but acknowledging that our interpretations of them might be limited.
Precisely. It's a nuanced approach to skepticism that allows us to function in the world, without clinging to these rigid beliefs.
Right. Okay.
Now, another key concept for Timon was this phrase, oudine malon,
Okay.
which translates to no more. It's a central tenet of Pyrrhonism. And Timon interpreted it as determining nothing and withholding assent.
Okay, that's a bit dense.
Yeah.
Break that down for me. What does it really mean to determine nothing and withhold assent?
Essentially, it's about recognizing that, well, we don't have access to absolute objective truth.
Okay.
So instead of making definitive claims about reality, we should hold back from forming, firm beliefs we can observe, we can experience.
Right.
But we refrain from saying this is definitely how it is.
So it's a call for intellectual humility.
Yes.
Acknowledging the limits of human understanding.
Exactly.
I guess that makes sense given the whole suspending judgment thing. But doesn't this lead to a sort of paralysis where you can't really make any decisions or take any action?
That's a common misconception about Pyrrhonism, but Timon actually addressed this. Remember the honey example? Pyrrhonists still rely on appearances for practical matters. They don't deny the evidence of their senses.
Right.
They just don't jump to absolute conclusions based on them. It's about navigating the world with a sense of cautious awareness, I guess.
So it's not about becoming totally passive
Right.
or detached from the world, but
Yeah.
finding a way to engage with it
Yeah.
while acknowledging the limits of our knowledge.
Exactly. And this ties into Timon's skepticism about using hypotheses.
Okay.
He believed that accepting things based on, unproven accessions was a shaky foundation for knowledge.
It's like he's anticipating the scientific method in a way, where you
Yeah.
formulate hypotheses,
Right.
test them,
Yeah.
and revise them based on evidence. You don't just accept things blindly.
That's a great connection.
Yeah.
Timon was all about scrutinizing assumptions and avoiding, dogmatic pronouncements.
Right.
And to really understand the depth of his thinking, we have to remember that Timon wasn't just a poet
Right.
or a disciple of Pyrrho. He was also a serious philosopher in his own right, grappling with these complex ideas. For example, he delved into the nature of time and divisibility.
Oh, that sounds pretty heavy.
It was. But the key takeaway here is that Timon was fully engaged with the intellectual currents of his time.
Yeah.
And he wasn't afraid to tackle difficult questions.
Which brings us back to that central tension we talked about earlier.
Right.
Timon championed Pyrrho's philosophy,
Yeah.
which discourages engaging in philosophical debates. Yet there he was, actively participating in those very debates.
It does seem like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Totally. Here's a devoted student of Pyrrho, the master of suspending judgment, jumping into the philosophical arena and taking on some of the greatest minds of his time.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, don't believe anything definitively, but also let me prove why you're wrong. Such a fascinating paradox. How do we make sense of this? Was he just a hypocrite?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
To understand this apparent contradiction, we need to consider the context of ancient Greek philosophy.
Okay, let's unpack that context.
Right.
What was the philosophical scene like in Timon's time?
Well, in ancient Greece, philosophical debate wasn't just a quiet academic exercise.
Right.
It was a public spectacle, a way of life. Imagine the agora, the bustling marketplace in Athens. Philosophers would gather there and engage in these lively debates, often in front of large crowds.
So it was less about finding absolute truth
Yeah.
and more about the performance,
Yeah.
the clash of ideas, the intellectual sparring.
Precisely. And for a skeptic like Timon, engaging in these debates might not have been about proving his own views correct,
Right.
but rather about exposing the weaknesses and inconsistencies in the arguments of others. Think of him as a philosophical gadfly, poking and prodding at dogma, challenging people to question their assumptions.
Ah, so he was using debate as a tool to undermine dogmatism itself. It's like he's saying, look, even using your own methods of reasoning, we can't arrive at certainty, so why hold on to these rigid beliefs?
That's a brilliant way to put it. It's almost as if he's playing a philosophical game, using the rules of debate to deconstruct the very systems of thought being debated.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on Timon. He wasn't just a passive skeptic.
Right.
He was actively challenging the philosophical status quo through his writings, his participation in debates. But how does this relate to us today? I mean, we're not living in ancient Greece anymore. Why should we care about this long-dead, poetry-loving skeptic?
That's the key question, isn't it?
It is.
And I think Timon's relevance lies in his unique approach to skepticism, this blend of questioning, satire, and engagement.
Okay.
It offers us a model for how to navigate a world that's, well, overflowing with information and competing viewpoints.
You're saying he's like a guide for critical thinking in the digital age.
Exactly. Timon reminds us to be wary of dogma, to question assumptions, to be skeptical of grand narratives. His satirical approach shows us the absurdity of clinging to rigid beliefs in a world where uncertainty is inevitable.
But it's not just about tearing down ideas, right? He also encourages us to engage, to explore, to even find value in those opposing viewpoints.
Absolutely. His willingness to participate in philosophical debates, even while advocating for a philosophy that discouraged such engagement, shows us that skepticism doesn't have to lead to passivity. It can be a catalyst for critical thinking, for meaningful dialogue.
So it's about finding that balance between questioning everything
Yeah.
and being open to different perspectives.
Right.
Not an easy thing to do.
Not easy at all. But Timon shows us that intellectual humility and curiosity are not weaknesses,
Yeah.
but strengths. They allow us to navigate the complexities of knowledge and to grow as thinkers.
It almost makes him sound like a role model for today's world.
I think that's a great way to put it. Timon's legacy challenges us to embrace the uncertainty of knowledge, to be critical but also open-minded, and to engage in thoughtful dialogue even with those we disagree with.
Right.
Those are essential skills for navigating the complexities of the modern world.
And for our listeners, I think Timon's life and work offer a really thought-provoking question. If even a staunch skeptic like Timon could find some value in the work of philosophers he otherwise mocked, doesn't that make us reconsider how quickly we dismiss ideas we disagree with? Are we maybe too quick to shut down opposing viewpoints without truly listening?
That's a brilliant point and a great question for all of us to reflect on. It challenges us to examine our own intellectual habits,
Yeah.
to make sure we're not just paying lip service to open-mindedness and intellectual humility, but truly living those values.
So let's all try to take a page from Timon's book.
Okay.
Let's question, explore, engage, and be open to the possibility that even in disagreement, there might be some spark of insight that can help us understand the world a little bit better.
That's a powerful message, and I think this deep dive into Timon's world has shown us that the pursuit of knowledge isn't about finding definitive answers,
Yeah.
but about cultivating a mindset of inquiry, skepticism, and a genuine willingness to learn, even from those we might initially disagree with.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Timon of Phlius, it's remarkable how much his ideas still resonate with us today. Like he was wrestling with these huge questions about knowledge and doubt and how to even engage with different viewpoints. All those things are super relevant to us today.
Absolutely. Timon's legacy is a gift for anyone, really, who is trying to navigate the complexities of knowledge and belief in any age. He reminds us that, it's okay to not have all the answers,
Right.
to embrace uncertainty, and to constantly be questioning the world around us.
It's almost like he's saying, don't just accept what you're told. Think for yourself. But don't get so caught up in your own ideas that you shut out other perspectives.
Precisely. That's the beauty of Timon's approach. He combines skepticism with a genuine intellectual curiosity.
Right.
He challenges us to be, both critical thinkers and open-minded explorers.
I keep thinking about that point you made earlier about Timon finding value in the work of the philosophers he mocked.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful idea. It really challenges us to look for those nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah.
even in ideas that we might initially disagree with.
It is a lesson in intellectual humility.
Yeah.
Timon, this master of satire, this champion of doubt, still recognized that even those he disagreed with could offer valuable insights. It's a reminder that knowledge is, well, it's a collaborative process, a conversation that spans centuries
All right.
and includes a multitude of voices.
It makes me wonder if we've lost a bit of that in our modern world. What with social media and, echo chambers.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just surround ourselves with people who think exactly like us and to dismiss anyone who holds a different view.
That's a real danger.
Yeah.
And I think Timon offers us an antidote. He encourages us to engage with those who challenge our thinking,
Right.
to listen with an open mind, and to be willing to learn from perspectives that might initially seem strange
Right.
or even offensive.
It's a call for intellectual courage, isn't it? To step outside of our comfort zones and really grapple with ideas that make us uncomfortable.
Exactly. And that's where real growth happens, when we're willing to question our own assumptions,
Right.
to have our beliefs challenged, and to potentially even change our minds. Timon reminds us that this process of questioning and exploring isn't a sign of weakness, but of intellectual strength.
I think that's a great takeaway from this deep dive. Timon of Phlius, the dancer turned skeptical poet and philosopher, reminds us that intellectual humility, curiosity, and a willingness to engage with different perspectives are, well, they're just essential qualities for any thinker, skeptic or not.
And perhaps even more importantly, he shows us that the pursuit of knowledge isn't about finding those definitive answers or clinging to rigid beliefs. It's about embracing that ongoing journey, the constant exploration, the joy of discovering new ideas, and the possibility of being surprised by what we find.
So let's all try to channel a bit of Timon in our lives. Let's be skeptical, but also curious. Let's question everything, but also be open to learning from everyone. And let's never stop exploring this fascinating, complex world of ideas.
Beautifully said. Timon would be proud.